So like I said, this is the Kitsap Sun's editorial board. We're talking with April Ferguson, who's a candidate for the 23rd District legislative seat. And go ahead, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us just in a few minutes who you are and why you're running.
I'm April Ferguson. I live in Suquamish. I'm a member of Suquamish Advisory Council. I'm a mother of four. I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an 18-month-old. And I'm very community oriented. Some of the things that I'm interested in doing is changing the idea of parks. That's something actually introduced on the Suquamish Advisory Council. Is we have it's something I'm just starting into that I want to get more involved in. So my community service side of what I like to do is we're in the modern day where we talk about diversity, but yet our parks are not diverse. They're meant for mainstream able children, physically able children. And I have a special needs child, and so my goal is to start joining in the efforts to get special needs parks throughout the county and eventually the state, and to change the idea of a park, that parks are for everyone. And that's something that I'm interested in. I'm also I'm interested in working with programs for adults with disabilities and children with disabilities. One of my concerns, and I met with Dist, and the director was Dist. I can't recall her name right off the top, but I met with her to just because I wanted to hear from someone with the education, the experience that works in the field, what can be done better. And she talked about, one, forecasting. We forecast our senior citizens to know what our needs going to be in the future to make sure that they are taken care of. Well, in our modern day, modern day medicine is making it so those with special needs that typically would not live as long, some of the ones that are more with physical handicaps, are living longer. And they're outliving their parents, but yet we're not forecasting taking care of them. And that's going to be a problem in the future, just as much as it's going to be a problem when we don't have enough money to provide and take care of our senior citizens. And so that's actually a special interest I have. I want to, in the legislature, bring up that idea and get the ball rolling on forecasting and preparing for the future. I used to be a business owner. I'm very open about why I lost my business. I'm a very strong-willed woman, and I'd like to take a stand. I'm a community activist. I stand up for issues. And I had a woman that had a special needs, and the state she was a wonderful teacher.
What was the business?
I owned a child care center, Caring Hands Learning Center. And she was a good teacher. She had more education than I did in the field. And the state wanted me to fire her. And but before they wanted me to fire her, they made a biased comment against her. And when they made that biased comment, she got me on the phone for the next time because they were trying to call her and ask her questions without ever meeting her. And I listened to them saying, "We know you love your job. We're just concerned that you're able to do your job." And I could sense the bias right off the back. And so when they came into the building to observe her, I said that witnesses need to be present to observe a staff member because she does have special needs. I'm her employer, and I have to make sure that we're not violating Disabilities Act and discrimination laws.
If it's okay, what agency, if you don't mind?
Department of Early Learning. And so I stood my ground, and they said that if I would not let them observe her alone, that they would shut me down. And I continued to stand my ground, and they finally did sneak into a room when they got me focused on a video for training, a training video, and they observed her for about 2 minutes and came out, and they said that she is not competent. And when I asked them the reasoning, she said, well, she didn't take advantage of a good learning opportunity to teach diversity. And I'm like, okay, no, you're nitpicking here. And they didn't ask for her resume. They didn't ask for her work history. They wouldn't talk to her job coach, which I always made sure that any staff members with disabilities had job coaches. I had 10 staff, and I had 3 individuals at any given time that had disabilities. I enjoyed having them work for me. And they just didn't do the work that they should have done, and they wanted me to fire her. And she had more education than me in the field, and I just believed that that was wrong, that she could get an education to work in a field, and we can use her disability against her. I mean, that's no future for her. And so I refused to fire her, and they shut me down. And then they lied and slandered me. And
So when you say they shut you down, you did not have a license to run the care facility? Is that what it was?
They took my license
Your
away.
license was?
And they permanently disqualified me from working in the field.
Okay.
And I've been on ongoing lawsuits against the state since then.
It is currently a lawsuit right now?
Yes.
Okay.
They have not been able to dismiss it yet.
Okay.
And
Why did you decide to run for state legislature? It sounds like you have a few things.
Those few things
okay.
coming together, losing my business, being 29 years old, and it was 12 days before I turned 30. I owned a 50-kid child care center. I was a success story. And I lost that, and I started looking at the reasons why and the regulations on my business. And like, for example, little things like claiming that my daughter was physically restrained in a stroller and telling that I physically restrained children. But yet when you go look in the public records, you find out that I put my daughter in a stroller and went between each classroom and turned off the lights after closed. And they got me for physical restraining. And I was like, well, how is this happening? And I want to go on a witch, it's natural to think the state agency, it's corruption. Well, I started doing the research, and I started looking at laws and different agencies that we've had similar complaints about, like labor and industries. And the problem is the laws are left so broad that the state licensors, one, they leave it open for interpretation, and two, they also make it hard for the licensors who really are trying to do their right job, licensors, inspectors, whatever the job is within that state agency that would be enforcing that. They make it impossible for them to actually do a good job, because I like to say our legislators are lazy. Every word that goes into a law will ultimately have an effect on somebody's life. And therefore, when you are making that law, you need to be competent. You need to research it. You cannot just rubber stamp things. And so when I look at laws, I look at how a law is going to affect something. How can it be taken the wrong way? And how well do we put the intent in there? Because every law also has an intent that needs to be followed. So I started, after that kind of research, I started realizing that we could do better, and I'm confident that I can be more competent. I'm confident that I'll be more conscious of my decisions and understand how those laws are going to end up affecting people's lives, just everyday people.
It sounds like you have a very specific complaint that led you down this path to do this.
It did, but
Tell me about
more research from there.
Sure, but you clearly have a kind of a grudge because of this issue and how you feel about the state.
No, I wouldn't call it a grudge.
Okay.
More of a mission to fix things.
Okay, but that is a very narrow and specific thing.
Yeah.
Tell me, as you've decided to make this decision, you're representing people, lots of different issues, lots of different types of folks in your district. How have you broadened your own look? So it's not just the things that you went through in your life, but what else is important to you? What else do you think is?
The problems with those interpretations of laws they affect everybody. They're within every state agency. For example, labor and industries. There is laws within labor and industries that make it hard for a person to interpret like proper licensing regulations. I did pull a public record request on labor and industries, and I found within the public records, the inspectors, I do this all the time, I pull public record requests on different state agencies to study the problems within the state agency. And the inspectors are talking about how they need to pull 60 permits each. That is their quota. Okay, if there is a quota to pulling citations, then it is no longer about health and safety, those regulations. Those regulations are about making profit. Whenever you have a quota, you have an agenda, a profit agenda. And so
they had a quota
for 60 citations each. That's in public record, them talking. And it's just, that's a shame, because those business owners, they're trying to make a livelihood. They're trying to pay their employees.
Who was given a quota? I'm sorry, I didn't follow
Labor
that.
and industries, electrical inspectors.
Okay.
A quota of 60 citations each a month.
Not just inspections, but citations.
Citations, not just inspections, citations, that's correct. And that's not right. That's not the purpose of regulations. And that tells me we've got problems, like over-regulating. When we're creating jobs within government, but we're destroying businesses, choking our businesses, and taking away jobs within the private sector, it is better to have less government jobs and have more businesses that help our economy. And so, like when I've mentioned this before, and I've had people say, like, I've had some friends in labor industries, and they're like, well, what you were talking about, we would end up losing our jobs. They would have to downsize on us if we cut these regulations. And I was like, well, when it comes to the liberties of the people and people's livelihoods, you bet we should downsize on government jobs if they're not needed. And what happens in return is all of a sudden businesses start being more successful, and they're able to bring in more jobs. So when you weigh the two, more private sector jobs or more government jobs? Private sector, they bring in revenue.
Are those two things always directly opposed to one another, do you feel?
Not sure your question, the meaning. You're gonna define the question, I'm not sure.
Do you have to cut? You're saying it's a direct correlation. Cutting jobs over here grows them on this side.
I do believe so,
You feel that
because
way?
if the jobs...
What's unnecessary in government? What's our state doing that they shouldn't be doing?
Well, like, for example, I'm going to give you a really good one. See these light bulbs up here?
Sure.
Okay. There used to be a day when it was like-in-kind replacement to change the ballasts in those. In this day and age, to change those ballasts, you must pull a permit. Now, when you pull the permit, you want to know what happens? Okay. So you have I believe it's 72 hours inspection time by labor and industries. That means that's how long they have. So the person that's coming out to change your light bulbs does your light bulbs and ballasts, okay? They're going to have to come back out again. That's more labor, which is going to cost you more money to pay for them to come out to meet the inspector when the inspector does their inspection of changing ballasts. It used to be like-in-kind replacement across the country. And now, pretty much actually it's in every state. Ballast changing, you must permit. That is just one example. And if you pull these laws and you start looking at them, you find more and more of them like that.
So the question then becomes, how do you get, because obviously there are some people that may know the same thing that's sitting in the seats now.
Yes.
How do you get a majority to say that law needs to be changed? What is your goal when you get there? What is the goal to try to convince everybody?
Honestly, okay, I'm going to use a little example. Matter of fact, this is interesting. I'm going to use the example right on camera when it's about my opponent, Jack Carroll. Jack Carroll, I've met the guy. He's a Democrat, but I like him.
He's running for the same position.
Same position. I'm not. I play very very clean, and I look for the good in each person. And I like Jack Carroll. If so, of course I want to beat him because I want the seat. But if life so brings him and I both to a seat someday, I would love to work with him. I believe it's also about your communications, working with people, being able to sell a point to someone. Just because another state representative, like a Democrat, votes for something that you disagree with, doesn't mean that they did it with ill intent. There could have been maybe a lack of education in the facts on how it would create a different chain reaction of events that could eventually take a turn that has a negative effect on society. And so do the proper research and present that research to those who you think in the House that would be interested in it. Yes, there are going to be people, and I know this. I have a good friend that I consider a friend, a state representative, that introduced a bill to stop mutilation of little girls. And you would think in the state of Washington, you would think that would stop. We would stop mutilating little girls. She didn't succeed, and there was Democrats that opposed her, and I just couldn't understand because they're for women's rights and
What bill was that?
equality. I don't have the name. Okay, by the way, I'm not the best with remembering the actual numbers of bills, so I have to look it up. But it was a bill to stop mutilation of little girls.
What do you mean by mutilation?
Probably, was it a genital?
Yeah, we still allow, it mainly happens with immigrants coming into our country. We still allow them to make that decision on so that's not right. And I mean, especially in this day and age, you would think that we would get that point. We're making a decision for those little girls that are going to affect their, you know, their future in a way that
Okay,
I'm
so
not going
April,
to.
April, I have a question. You have 4 kids, one's 18 months. And that's a lot of work to,
It is.
I mean, especially it seems your approach to the job where you're gonna be doing a lot of research and and you're gonna have all your constituents that are gonna bring various questions and problems that they want you to address. How are you gonna have the time for all of that?
I love that question, actually. I actually get that all the time. And
Okay.
it is definitely, because it is different. You don't typically see a stay-at-home mom running for office, especially not one with young children. But this is how I put it. And this is what I was telling the Herald, and they put it in their paper when they made my announcement, is I worked at a child care center. I owned one. And I saw what everyday working moms go through. And they don't have out of session time, where when they're out of session, they get to make their schedules up and they get to say, yes, I can meet with you at this time and I can meet with you at this time. And they get to have that flexibility where they don't get that. They work 9 to 5. They actually work sometimes awful hours. I mean, you got nurses that work 3 nights in a row, 12-hour shifts. They do not get that convenience. And so anyone who would believe that a state representative that is a mother has a more demanding job, and this is what I actually say to opponents and other politicians that say it's not possible. I say anybody that believes that a state representative that is a mom has a more demanding job than any other mom out there that has to work does not deserve to represent those mothers.
Okay, April, you have 4 children.
Yes.
You lost your daycare center in January a year ago. How do you support your family?
My husband has a good job. He has a very good job. He's actually an electrician, and he runs an electrical shop.
That's why you know about balance.
That's why I knew, well, that's how I got into labor and industries. But along with that, I got into ESD and a whole bunch of others as well, like Human Rights Commission.
So now your
I-
kids are in daycare when you're not there.
I actually, when I campaign, my babies go with me. And we actually enjoy campaigning together. They all have little itty-bitty signs. And it's actually very enjoyable. My children do things like stuff envelopes, and it's really cute. They'll be in a store and they'll be like, vote for mommy.
Okay, April, what has been the reaction of your party as a result of the lawsuit and the?
Negative. The party,
How did they demonstrate that?
they demonstrated it by refusing to acknowledge that I was a Republican. Matter of fact, I'm willing to tell you here. I don't mind telling it on camera, because I'm a very truthful person. I believe we need truth and honesty. The party originally was supporting me, and they were running my opponent, Loretta Burns, against Hanson, and she announced against Hanson. I announced it first against Sherry Appleton, and they
Oh, she switched.
she
So
switched
now
right before
she's-
filing.
Oh, right.
I was the first one in the race, and the party said they weren't going to run anyone against me, but they weren't going to acknowledge that I was Republican. And they said this right before their board meeting. They took me to the side, and there's 2 of them. One of them, I'm not going to say who, because I don't want to bash people. I mean, especially since I'm on camera. And they said that the lawsuit embarrassed them, and that until the lawsuit's resolved, they do not want to support me. I was like, well, don't have to endorse me, but you can't acknowledge that I'm a Republican. I'm obviously a Republican. I mean, no one had even seen my opponent before. She had never been to any meetings. I had been to meetings, volunteered at events. I mean, I was definitely a Republican, and I've been around for a long time. Well, they go out and they have their board meeting, and all the PCOs are there, and people are wondering why aren't they supporting me? And they said, we've never seen her. They told the PCOs that I've never been to any events. And then one of the Republican women's group, and I know, and they see this, I'm not working for their vote. I'm working for, the few people in those boardrooms are not the voice that I'm trying to represent. I do stand strong to my party, and they would consider this the 11th law or something, or amendment that I'm breaking. That means you don't cut down another Republican. But, honestly, when I see it, I don't think that's right. Dishonesty is dishonesty.
Why do you choose to still run with that party
Because
affiliation?
I believe in the platform. Just because.
What's most important to you in the platform? What makes you a Republican? What do you think's important?
The abiding to our Constitution and understanding individual liberty. The rights, the basic rights, like the right to bear arms, property rights. That's the reason why I'm a Republican. And just because some people in the party don't behave appropriately, I mean, I know it's going to be that way, and I'm sure there's Democrats that have the same problem in the Democrat Party. It doesn't mean that the party itself and the platform is bad. It's like kind of like with the church, I've been told. Just because the members in a church are rude to you doesn't mean the church is bad. And so I'd like to be kind of a beacon of light in the party. I'll be honest. I don't care what it brings me. I'm going to be honest. And shortly after, a Republican women's group that I belong to messaged me, and they said, we hear on your flyers you're saying you're a member of the Silverdale CPAC Republican Women's, and you don't. So they said that I was lying, and what other lies have I spread? And I'm like, well, wait a second. And so before my opponent was supported over me, they had sent out a flyer to all their members by email. It said, look, our own member, April Ferguson, and is running for House of Representatives. So I just sent the flyer back, and I was like, you can't deny that I was part of your club. You just can't deny that.
How long have you been part of that group?
When that happened, I had been a member for several months, but I hadn't renewed the membership this year. And so I did give them that. I was like, yeah, but you guys told me it wasn't a problem. I didn't renew it this year. But what they were saying is they were saying that I had never been a member. And so at the time the flyers were made, I was still a member. And so it was kind of like.
Why do you think you're a threat?
What was that?
Why do you think you're a threat to them?
Well,
To everybody that's coming against you, because it seems like, you.
I'm going to talk about establishment, and this is not just to the Republican Party, this is to the Democrat Party, this is to establishment in general. I'm a free thinker, I'm a free mind, and I do what's right, not what's popular.
Well, Loretta, the person, she's the Republican, right, that's running, and
Yes.
she filed for this spot, against Sherry Appleton at the very last minute. Isn't that correct? She was going to run against Drew Hansen,
Yes.
and then she switched.
Yes.
I think that has something to do with it.
Matter of fact, you probably remember she came into the Sacramento Advisory Council?
Yeah.
She mentioned that she was running against Drew
Yes.
Hansen.
Yes,
And
I do.
it seems like people have forgotten that, and honestly, I haven't been campaigning on it. Because she has the right to switch. She has that right. I don't agree with it, but it's her right.
Who do you consider your strength as far as constituents? Who
My
would you go
strength?
after? Like, who would support you?
Who's gonna
in this?
Everyday people. Just everyday people. When people are fed up with establishment. When we're voting for someone, we're looking for someone that's going to represent us, not someone that represents a few people.
What should the legislature's priorities be to represent everyday people?
Okay, so economy. I believe that we need to start, oh wait, I might have got your question. Could you repeat the question?
What should the legislature be most focused on? You're saying everyday folks are upset with how it works now. Where should the focus be?
Cutting down on unnecessarily regulations, big government, places where government's not needed. That's one issue because we need to build our economy, and the best way to do that is to support our businesses. And we cannot choke them to death. I do agree with health, safety, and regulations. I do agree we need some. There are definitely regulations we need. I mean, there is a reason why we got them. We used to have guys climb up on skyscrapers. We don't have those same accidents anymore. So there's an unreasonable amount, but you can't be creating them for the purpose of, well, we want to pull these permits, and because every permit that's pulled is profit for labor and industries, every permit. And so there is too much permit requirements, but anyways, I could go on. There's so many examples. I could go on all day about that.
So it's primarily regulation. Did you think you want to do
Regulation.
something about that?
Economy, yeah. I also believe that transportation is a serious issue. One of the issues I believe that we have in Washington State is a humility issue. Is we don't always have the answers, and the best way to find the answers is by first acknowledgement that you don't have the answers. When a representative sits at a forum and says, "Oh yeah, I want to do this, this, and this," it's better to say, If you do not have an exact plan that you know is going to work, it's better to say, I'm looking into this, or I'm going to go this route, or we could do research in this. We do not have all the answers, and for transportation, we have been trying to fix it for a
What do
long
you think
time.
are the problems with transportation?
Well, one, I think it comes down to management and from the very get-go. I like to use examples in other states that work. One of them is Utah. I lived many years in Utah, and transportation in Utah works. And why is they plan far ahead. They plan for entire cities to come up. You can literally go and see an entire community rise in a matter of a year with elementary schools, libraries, church buildings, shopping centers. It's because they plan their development. And they actually have, like, for example, a grid system. Now, can we bring this into Washington? No, because we've already started.
Yeah.
But there are aspects that we can bring in that could help improve, and there are ways to incorporate. We will never have Utah transportation because we started off bad. But in Utah, for example, okay, so you have congestion. They carefully planned when the population got to that point where there was going to be congestion. So you have 3 valleys. You have a highway. On each side of the highway, when you get off and exit, you have a city this way direction, a city this direction. So you have Sandy, West Jordan. Okay, so it's very carefully planned. Any place you get off the highway, straight shot across the valley, the other direction. Any place. On the other, about 5 miles, I would say about 5 miles in to the valley off of the highway, you're going to have Bangladesh Highway. Bangladesh Highway is a secondary highway. So at any given time when there is congestion, anybody along any place on the highway can get off the highway, drive 5 miles, and get on another highway, which will end in the exact same direction, the exact same place they need to go. It's a grid system. It works perfect. It's all about planning like that.
So
Do you
how
think
do you
the good-
fund those things? What's your attitude about?
The funding of transportation. Well,
Yeah.
this is the thing. We have given more, and I will be honest, I don't have the exact figures on me, but I do know that we have given transportation more money than we have in history, and yet we still fail to fix our roads like we need to. We still fail to fund transportation. And it's really in management. We have a lot of money, it's how we're using the money.
So what
Do you
is
think the
your
Growth
attitude?
Management Act does a good job of planning? I mean, that's our tool to do what Utah.
I do not believe the Growth Management Act
What are
does.
its flaws?
And remember where I talked about honesty? On the Growth Management Act, I don't prefer to answer because I don't believe that I have enough research to answer yet. So I do need to research more into it, but I just, looking at it compared to, it's not doing the job. We're continuing to have the same problem with development in transportation.
So April, the
But I do need
state,
to study more on growth management.
excuse me,
I'm
the
sorry.
state is now looking, I believe the number was $58 billion, or was it, for this huge transportation to extend the light rail and all this for the state of Washington. You're gonna be voting, if you get elected, you're gonna have the opportunity to vote on this kind of an issue. How do you feel about that, having brought transportation up as a major issue?
Well, we're not using the money that we have appropriately already. And I think that before we fund another transportation project, we need to first fix management in the Department of Transportation.
How do you do that?
One, we need to do more of our audits on those. We need to take a pressure hose to the agency pretty much. We really just need to get in there and examine the different administrative jobs and how efficiently money is being thrown around.
Are you gonna have
It's gonna
time?
be research.
What I worry about is what Jim was talking about. So you're gonna have a lot of issues. You're not always gonna have time to do all the research. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, but what do you do when it comes, you're gonna have to rely on other people,
Exactly.
you're not gonna be able to know all of it yourself.
Exactly. I agree. I don't have all the issues on growth management. What is going to make me do now is I'm going to go ask someone that I know that knows a lot about growth management to do more research. That's how I work. And so, like for example, I know a young man that understands transportation very well, and I think that we need to utilize the knowledge of different people. A lot of the problems to fixing solutions are actually in the minds of constituents. We need to listen to the constituents because they might have an idea that works better. And so, like for example, there is a young man that I know that understands transportation very well, and he's brought in a lot of things to my attention, and then I ask him questions, like for example, well, in this such and such state they do this, what do you think? How could we do this? That's how you formulate ideas, is by communication like that.
Have you spent much time in Olympia? Have you met with your current representatives at all?
I
Seen-
have
yeah.
talked to Sherry Appleton. Not that much to Sherry Appleton. I have met with a lot of different representatives. I've actually testified in a Senate committee hearings on like Bill 1491, and I have spent a lot of time in Olympia, also at things like rallies and stuff as well.
1491, what was that?
That was your early achievers bill. That was in regards to early learning.
What about the big, elephant in the middle of the room down in Olympia, the McCleary decision?
Okay,
So where do you stand on all that?
this is a good one, and this comes back to accepting we don't have solutions. I believe we do not have the solution already to fix the problem with education, and I think that we need to start looking elsewhere, again, on where get some successful models. One of the things is our lands, our public lands. Well, we use them to build schools. Well, like for an example, in Utah, they don't just use them to build schools. There's a certain amount per child in the schools that each child, it's a small amount. It's kind of like supplemental. It's supplemental for the schools. And they actually use it for even teacher salaries and stuff. They actually use it for more purposes.
They use what?
They use their the trust lands. I always get the term wrong,
Oh,
but the
state trust, the revenue from
they
state
use it
trust.
for more than just building schools. They use it for other purposes within education,
Well, you know
getting
what?
equipment and stuff like that.
Well, McCleary is saying that the state is required to fund basic education, which
They are.
includes teachers' salaries. But the argument is, do we have it, is there enough?
Do we have enough money?
Yeah,
We do.
have they put enough money into that to
Yes.
meet those needs?
I
And
do
that's
believe
the
that.
argument.
Do you think that the system should go from K to, what was it, David, that we had talked about, it was K to?
Well, you're an early education advocate. Right now, basic education is defined as kindergarten through 12th grade. Should it go lower than kindergarten?
I
Should the
do
state
believe
be
it
paying
should.
for preschool programs?
It should stay from K to 12th grade education.
Is it
one-
appropriate for the state to fund all-day kindergarten? I think that's important.
Actually, I believe that, I haven't really took a stand on that one. But as a mom, I'm really excited for all-day kindergarten. So, sometimes we get all excited for things and, we have to actually really think, is it in the best interest? I'm gonna have to look into that because I don't actually have a stand on that. That does take up budget though, trying to provide all-day kindergarten. That does take things up a tad bit. But on the, you asking if we have enough funds, I believe that we do. I honestly believe we do. I believe that it comes down to fiscal responsibility with those funds. Basic education, we need to get basic education defined. What is basic education? And I think that's part of our problem is we don't have that defined. And so we are putting money in all these different areas, but we are going beyond basic education, and then we can't give adequate basic education. And so when you think about it, that really comes down to fiscal responsibility. We are spending where we just don't have.
Now,
And-
are we getting the right results for the money we are putting in there?
Correct. And we are not, I do not believe we're getting the right results for the money that we're putting in there. About 25% of ninth graders will not graduate. And I have a different take on that too. I don't believe that they don't just graduate because of the schools. I believe it's also because, well, we get a lot of hands-on learners that get bored and they want to go to work. And our laws are very restrictive towards young people that work and what they're allowed to do when they're in school. And I believe that we need to have more skills and more programs to encourage those hands-on learners, because not everyone wants to go to college. And when you're in a system that's pushing you to go to college and you just don't want to go, at that age you are very independent. You will just drop out. And if we want to keep them in school so they graduate, then we need to give them something to be interested in. Instead of,
Be a trade school line for
yeah,
non-college bound kids.
if that's where they want to be, we should encourage children to go where they want to go instead of trying to push them where we want them to go. That's what causes them to drop out.
Standardized testing.
What's that?
Standardized testing. How do you feel
Exactly.
about it?
I'm against standardized testing. And I actually was talking to a special education teacher recently, and she was telling me, I'm not going to give her name. She told me not to give her name, but I was talking to her just about different. I always go to the professionals in the fields to get their take on things. And she was talking about how she feels it's criminal what they make her do with her special needs kids. And I agree with her.
What is the best way to measure their progress then? If you're not giving kids tests, if you're saying you don't need to graduate because you can go into a trade track, how will we measure our system? How will we know we're doing the right thing?
You can still do tests. Tests are okay, but like I use a lot of examples. I don't have to give the same old line every time. I like to actually explain where I'm coming from. I looked at a teacher's manual that was from the teacher's manual was the state's guidelines for grading a teacher, and it asked these 3 questions. And one of the questions talked about the student will be able to quickly answer the question and correctly. Another one was there was another one. I'm not going to go on the middle one because I don't remember it. But the other one was that students will understand that the correct answer is not always the right answer, and that they will work in a team to formulate an answer. Okay, there's a problem because that ended up being the one that the teacher was graded on. If the kids think like that, this is a teacher manual that our state grades teachers with. That one answer is wrong. We're supposed to teach our young people to be confident in themselves, confident in their skills and their abilities. We don't teach them that if it doesn't go with the flow, it's not correct. I believe that those skills and working with other people will come naturally in a healthy environment. Like in an early learning environment, yes, you encourage children to mingle and work together, but you also acknowledge their successes privately and individually. And if they got there on their own, you acknowledge that. And so right there, we're grading a teacher wrong. And so when I think about the standardized testing, it's like, well, our idea of correct isn't always correct. And I don't believe that the government should be restricting. I believe they're very restrictive of our teachers now. Our teachers used to have more liberties to use their education. I took education classes. I don't have a teacher degree, but I did take several education courses. I have an early learning, like my education, but in elementary school, elementary education, I have some classes as well. They talk about the different learning styles and about how to meet the needs of the different learning styles and how to adapt your classroom to the different learning styles. Standardized testing doesn't do that. The teacher's education and knowledge does do that. And so we need to support the teachers and stop restricting their ability to accommodate their classrooms.
Well, thanks. We appreciate you coming in for your time. We're just about at the end of what we promised here, but we'll let you kind of have a last statement for us, something to leave us with. We always say, if I was to ask you, I'm a voter, how are you different at doing this job than maybe my other choices would be? This is what I would invite you to do.
I would contemplate and I would research on my decisions. I would work with everyone as a team, and that means both sides. Even if I don't agree with the other side I'm pro-life. I don't agree with pro-choice. But I will work with that person who is pro-choice on another issue and not shun the other side just because I have different ideals than them. In Olympia, we have a problem. There are locker rooms. There is the Republican Hall and there is the Democrat Hall, and they don't intermingle. They don't work together. And in Olympia, I believe that I can stand strong to my integrity, and I can be an honest person, and I can stand to my platform and work with the other side. I also believe that I could listen to the constituents, and I believe that I could balance my time well enough to actually hear them out and try to champion bills and causes. On all causes, I'll just pass it for two things. Does it defy the proper rule of government? Does it put at risk individual liberty? If it doesn't do those two things, I don't care what party they are, who they are. If their cause is good, there's no reason why not to consider championing it.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate your time.